So have you ever thought about picking up a side gig? Maybe some freelance work, driving for a ride-sharing app, or even kicking off a small business on the weekends? Well, this whole thing, it's called moonlighting, and it's becoming more and more common. But it begs the question, how do companies actually handle it when their employees have a second job? All right, let's get into it.
And just to give you an idea of how common we're talking, the United States Census Bureau recently found that 7.8% of employees are holding down multiple jobs. That is a modern high. It's pretty clear the old 9-to-5 isn't the only game in town anymore. But as you can imagine, this whole trend creates a pretty tricky situation for their main employers.
Okay, so let's make sure we're all on the same page. What is moonlighting exactly? As you can see, the definition is super broad. It really covers everything from a classic part-time job to jumping into the modern gig economy. Basically, if you're earning money outside of your main job, that's moonlighting.
So why are people doing it? Well, the reasons are all over the map. The big one, of course, is money, earning extra income to deal with the rising cost of living. But it's really not just about the cash. For a lot of people, it's a chance to test out a new career, learn some new skills, or finally turn a passion project into something real. For others, it's a safety net against layoffs, or a smart way to launch a business.
Okay, now let's flip the script for a second and look at this from the company's point of view. They might totally respect an employee's hustle, but they've also got some pretty big concerns about how that outside work could end up affecting their own business. So what are they worried about? What are those risks? Why would a company even care what an employee does on their own time? Well, it really all boils down to a few key areas where that side gig could create some serious headaches for the business.
And this, right here, this is the fundamental tension of the whole moonlighting situation. On one side, you've got really valid reasons for employees to get a side hustle. But on the other, the employer is staring down some very real risks, like burnout, conflicts of interest, leaking confidential info, or even losing their clients to their own employees.
To try and manage all these risks, companies develop these formal moonlighting policies. So what we're going to do is actually decode one of these corporate rulebooks piece by piece to see exactly how they try to strike that really delicate balance between an employee's freedom and protecting the business.
Now, you might think these policies are just a flat-out ban, but here's the thing. That's usually not the goal. The real core principle, the foundation of it all, is actually transparency. Companies aren't necessarily saying no. They're saying, let us know. They just want a clear view of what's going on so they can spot any potential problems before they start.
And that transparency is handled through a pretty formal process. An employee can't just go and start a side gig. Nope. They have to put in a written request to their supervisor in HR, spelling out exactly what the work is and how much time it'll take. Then, the company reviews it for any red flags before giving a formal written yes or no.
Of course, there are some hard lines. Certain things are almost always a definite no-go. At the top of that list, working for a direct competitor. That's a big one. Also off-limits is anything that could hurt the company's reputation, using company gear or time for your side hustle, and, this is crucial, trying to poach the company's own clients or employees.
And each of these rules has some pretty clear business logic behind it. Banning the use of company resources, that protects their property and ideas. Making sure job performance stays high, that just ensures the main job stays priority number one. And the rules on conflicts and confidentiality, those are absolutely vital for protecting the business from rivals and data leaks.
And believe me, these policies aren't just suggestions. They have real teeth. The consequences for breaking the rules are serious. If you don't disclose a second job or your performance starts to slip or you cross one of those prohibited lines, well, that can lead to disciplinary action and yes, even getting fired. Companies take this stuff very seriously.
But let's zoom out for a minute. These policies are a reaction to the trend, right? But what's one of the biggest forces actually driving it? Well, a lot of economic research points to a really direct link between wages and the decision to start moonlighting. And this isn't some new thing. Check this out. A paper from the World Bank all the way back in 1989 looked into this exact issue. Researchers studied public sector workers to see if there was a connection between what they earned in their main salary and how likely they were to get a second job. And the data they found was pretty striking. Back in the mid-'80s in Peru, more than a quarter of all public sector employees were moonlighting. That's almost double the rate of people in the private sector. The study pretty much drew a straight line from that to the fact that public sector pay was just a lot lower.
So the ultimate takeaway from the research is powerful and pretty simple. For a lot of people, it really just comes down to financial necessity. The data confirmed it. When your primary job doesn't pay enough to cover the bills, you are way more likely to go find that income somewhere else.
And all of this brings us to a much bigger question about the future, The rise of the gig economy, remote work, all the motivations we've been talking about, it's all changing the very idea of what a job is and what an employee's relationship with their company even looks like.
So we're left with this final thought. In an economy where having just one job might not be the norm anymore, what does company loyalty even mean? As both companies and employees try to figure out this new world, the old rules are being rewritten, and it's forcing all of us to think differently about what a career, commitment, and being part of a team really is.